hardened, and even abusive. There were many who expressed genuine concern for the handling of this contentious issue in a better way. I do believe they were sincere, but I believe they were sincerely wrong. For the citizens of Springfield, I recommend going to the city website and read what your top law enforcement, prosecutors, and legal counsel have to say. We asked for and received definitive responses from the Chief Municipal Prosecutor, Police Chief, and Greene County Prosecutor. My conclusion from reading this response and hearing the public testimony was that many of the concerns expressed at the public hearing have already been addressed. For example, in 2011, the Greene County Prosecutor had 10,628 criminal charges referred by Springfield Police. Of those 10,628, only 124 were misdemeanor possessions of marijuana as the lead charge. Of the 124, only 30 involved misdemeanor marijuana as the lead charge. According to the Chief Municipal Prosecutor, first offender cases of marijuana is a fine of $100 to $250. If the fine and the expenses were paid, this disposition can allow the offender, if he completes probation, satisfactory to avoid municipal court record altogether. Finally, in 2011, Springfield Police Department officers made 0 physical arrests for misdemeanor possession of marijuana as the sole charge. There does seem to be a problem with the initiative petition ordinance that, if approved, would conflict with state and federal law. The long and short of it, this ordinance as conceived seems to serve no one, not the user of 35 grams or less, nor anyone else. In my judgment, the petition was poorly conceived and so legally flawed that to move it forward would need to abuse the system set up for citizens' involvement. As to voting and for the public, I will leave it to others to determine if this initiative was treated fairly by not letting the people vote. The cost of $180,000 may have been worth it and the legal expenses if it had passed, but I'm not so sure. Unlike other initiative petitions, I conclude this one was so flawed that to go further would have served no worthwhile purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. Mr. Burlington.
Well, we've gone back and forth on this with a lot of discussions. If y'all will permit me, I just want to speak plainly about this. I personally believe there's a great benefit to be had with the passage of some version of this. If you're the one that's on the other end of the handcuffs, legislation like this becomes very important. When you're the one on the other end of those handcuffs that haven't done injury or hurt anybody's property or committed a real crime, legislation like this is very important. This is an attempt to ease the screws that we've institutionally put in place over a section of our citizenry. It's not just a few people. There are a lot of people that, whether they're arrested or not, they're affected by our policies in regards to cannabis use. When this policy was started on the federal level, I got to be honest with you, it was based on faulty information. The reason marijuana is illegal is not based on truth. So that's why I, in my conscience, I believe I need to support something like this to help invalidate something that went wrong many, many years ago. And this is just a small step. And I understand the institutional resistance behind this. And I know I may be wasting my breath here, but I would sure implore my colleagues here to consider definitely not to repeal this. And I would also ask you to endorse the amendment that I've authored that only removes the citizen committee. At that point, I won't take
Mr. Sheffield.
Well, I'd like to second the comments by my colleague, Mr. Rush. I think he has done an excellent job of making many of the points that we would like to make here. But I'd like to add one additional point. And before I do that, with the indulgence of my fellow council members, I'd like to ask the Assistant City Clerk to read our oath of office.
I do solemnly swear that I possess all the qualifications required by the statutes of the state of Missouri and the charter of the city of Springfield, Missouri, to hold the office of council member in the city of Springfield, Missouri. I am not subject to any of the disqualifications set forth in the charter, that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States and of the state of Missouri, and the charter and the ordinances of the city of Springfield, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office, so help me God.
Thank you, ma'am. Each one of these bills, with the exception of 254, would require us, in my opinion, to violate that oath, because we would be essentially ignoring state law. And not only ignoring state law, but encouraging and in fact mandating the police department of Springfield to do the same, which would in turn be a violation of their oath of office. Is that not right, Chief Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
So I don't think that we can, in any conscience, support any bill other than 254.
Thank you. Mr. Compton.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question for Mr. Whitmer. Marijuana or cannabis is a controlled substance, and possession or use of it is state federal law. Is that correct?
It is a Schedule 1 controlled substance under federal law, and therefore is a crime under state law.
Thank you. I again would echo what my colleagues, Mr. Rush and Mr. Shesky, have said. I think the letters from the chief of police and from the prosecuting attorneys are very critical here. One of the comments that Chief Williams made is it mandates that we are not allowed to follow. It mandates that we are not allowed to follow state law nor utilize the Greene County Prosecutor's Office for marijuana violations. It would prevent us from bundling charges with other offenses, marijuana charges with other offenses, thus resulting in two courts being involved rather than one, increasing the burden on an already overburdened court system. Mr. Patterson, the prosecuting attorney, has written that I ask that you consider the oath that is in contrary to state law as you consider repealing the ordinance, and that it also sends a very poor message to our citizens and youth that we can choose which laws we want to obey, and a message that undermines the rule of law in our community. I just find no exceptions to that in the testimony, and so I will support Bill 254.
Thank you, Mr. Burleson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your indulgence. I'll make a very brief comment. And it looks like, the writing's on the wall here. I just want to make an additional comment in regards to at least my belief on federal law with this issue. I would challenge anybody in this room to find the constitutional authorization that gives the federal government the right to even prosecute a war on drugs to begin with.
Amen.
Now, that is where a lot of the information has come to us by police chief and others that have quoted federal sources. And again, the reason I feel like I need to make the comment, because I feel like there's also been statements that have challenged my commitment to my oath of office. And I would say to you that when federal law is in violation of the Constitution, I'm going to go with the Constitution rather than federal law. And I guess we have to flip a coin to decide which, if that's a violation of my oath of office or not. But I just wanted to make that statement before we voted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burleson. Mr. Cypher.
Hey, sir, did you make the comment? Amen. Oh, that's
our role and responsibility is to make sure we're protecting those values. Second thing is, what do we tell companies that want to locate here, that do drug testing? John Deere is a good example. What do we tell them when they do drug testing and they want clean workers? Springfield, we're open for business, but they're all going to fail your drug tests. I mean, how do we communicate that message? Are we protecting our citizens? Are we really being business friendly if we don't have a workforce that can work? The third thing I would say is, who's protecting the kids? I mean, kids, I feel like this is a selfish endeavor amongst people who have not proven that they're being unjustly convicted. Thank you, Mr. Bales.
This has been a tough one for me. We had the chance to vote on this, and we voted 6-3 to not send it to a vote of the people. I was one of the 3 no votes. We had the chance to stop it right there because I don't agree with it. But I do agree with our citizen petition process. And the more people I've talked to, I know technically we can do this. We could repeal it. Doesn't feel right to me. That's why I voted no originally. And we're not legalizing it. And every law-abiding citizen isn't going to run out and start smoking pot and failing on a drug test. We don't need that. The people that do already are. And like I said, the citizen petition process, we had a chance to vote this down, send it to a vote of the people where I really feel it would have failed miserably. But we didn't. So I'm going to support it. Bill 255 is going to increase the fine. It's going to remove what we were told would not stand up in court, the expungement, and putting a citizens oversight committee. And I hope you're wrong, and I hope we still do have a good group of employment people that can pass a drug test. I think we will.
Okay, any further comments?
Mr. Mayor, you're probably about to answer my question, but as far as the process and the order which we're going to vote is what I'm curious about.
Mr. Wigner?
The repeal is the first bill up. If you vote and that passes, then the other bills are mooted out. If it doesn't pass, then we have to go through each amendment because they're all variations of different amendments.
Okay, I think we have all made our comments and so forth. I generally go last. I sponsored item 23, which is the expungement citizens oversight and the increasing the fine to $450. But in the last 2 weeks and looking at this more stringently, I have to agree with Councilmember Mashevsky in that, we have a federal law and a state law that says this is illegal. I don't think we can carve out an oasis here locally, and I don't think we should. I think this is certainly a discussion that our society needs to have and need to discuss, but I think it needs to be on a state level. I think it's bad public policy to have 42 separate individual little policies around, where Fairgrove has one, Walnut Grove has something different, Willard is still different than Springfield, different from Ozark, different from there. So I think it needs to be a uniform thing at the state level, and as a result, I will support 254. So, with no further comment, will you please vote? And item 254 passes, and according to Mr. Whitmer, 255, 256, 257 are moot. And item 26, Council Bill 2012-62.
of Article 12, Technical Codes Administration and Enforcement in its entirety enacted.
Not surprised, but